Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Well Off Podcast where I interviewed for a second time Ryan Carr. For those that remember, Ryan was one of the first podcast guests that I had on the show, and today we actually had an opportunity to catch up. It's been a while since we spoke. Ryan told me a little bit about what he's been up to. We talked about his infill developments. We talked about highest and best use. We talked about dealing with tenants, cash for keys, kind of broke down that process to see what it's like for him. We discussed so many different things in this, so I think you're truly going to enjoy listening to Ryan because he's actually dabbled in several different things in real estate, including low-rise or development of low-rise apartment buildings, conversions, adding suites, all sorts of different things. So enjoy the episode. And I want to remind you that if you are looking for some small multis in the Golden Horseshoe, Niagara Falls area, sorry, not Niagara Falls area, but Niagara, Welland, St. Catharines, and Hamilton, I do have opportunities. I'm always looking to work with new clients, new people, build relationships. So you can always connect with me by going to welloff.ca, and my contact information is on the website. You can also book a call. And if you want to download some free reports, welloff.ca/report. Always looking forward to hearing from you guys. I know a lot of you have reached out to connect. And if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts, on the podcast app through Apple, that would be greatly appreciated. Your reviews mean a lot. So thank you so much for supporting the show, and I hope you'll enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. And for the second time, I have Ryan Carr here today. Ryan was actually one of the first guests that I had. We recorded the episode at a Durham REI meeting, and it was actually like in sort of this outdoor space with all the fans running, so the sound quality wasn't too great. Hopefully this time it's a little bit better. But yeah, Ryan is a full-time real estate investor in the GTA. He specializes in finding the highest and best use of property and coaching others to do the same. He's got a knack for finding hidden opportunities, and he is a regular contributor to the Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazine. Ryan, as always, welcome and thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Great. And normally what I like to do is ask you a little bit about your childhood, but I'm pretty sure that we've already done that. So this time, why don't we just get into it and see kind of what you've been up to lately, and maybe we can just catch up a bit.
Yeah, awesome. Gosh, what have I been up to lately? So we've got right now 15 or 16 open job sites in various phases of development. So over the last, we'll say 18 months, I still continue to purchase properties. I still continue to acquire. We're still constructing, we're still buying materials. We're still buying properties, like business is still rolling. Obviously things have changed with COVID, and that's sort of part and parcel with the last 12 months. But I mean, overall, I think that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And we got to find some silver lining out of this whole COVID mess and keep on moving forward.
Definitely. So 15 or 16 projects on the go at this time, you said?
Yeah, in various phases of development. So some of that means active construction. So I've got full-time staff on the T4 employee side, handling most of the construction, a little bit of back-end office staff as well. And then of course, all the severances and minor variances and land development deals that we're doing right now flow into that as well. So it's we're having fun with it. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. I know last time you were on the show, which was like 2 or 3 years ago, you were into a bit of wholesaling. You were doing a bit of vertical splits. You're doing a lot of different things. Are you kind of doing the same sort of thing right now, where you're touching all these different parts of real estate investing, or are you focusing on a specific niche?
Yeah. So my biggest thing for me is I'm an opportunity guy. And for me, I'm able to look at a lot of different deals and a lot of different areas of expertise and say, okay, I can find yield here, I can find yield here, I can find yield here, right? And when I'm doing that, I'm able to kind of stay ambidextrous to the market and be flexible with the way that opportunities are coming through. So are we still wholesaling? Yeah, I wholesale a handful of deals every year. Am I still coaching? Yeah, I take on a couple of coaching clients every year. Am I still building infill developments? Yeah, I am. I think we got 6 residential projects teed up for the next little bit. And then I got 4 or 5 low-rise apartments coming down the pipe as well. So there's all kinds of opportunity out there if people know where to look and know what to look for.
That's cool. So you're getting into infill developments, low-rise apartments. I don't think you were doing low-rise apartments the last time we spoke. Is that right? Is that a new thing?
Yeah. So this would have been in the last, we'll say 24 months, kind of thing. I've been snapping up land. I did my first land development deal, which was infill residential, just like duplexes and that. I bought the parcel in 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. So probably right around the time that you and I had that podcast, probably right around there was when I started first kind of dipping my toe into the waters and finding out what infill development was like. And now we just take it and started running with it. It's great.
Cool. How do you get so familiar with all these different things? Like not just anyone can buy a piece of land and start developing it. Like it takes a lot of time to really understand that process and developing relationships with people in terms of like for your zoning requirements and all that. So how do you do that? How do you manage to do so many different things?
Yeah. So when I'm looking at a land development deal, I'm looking at three very specific things. So I'm looking at the structure, the land, and then your own skill sets and time. Those three things are what I'm looking at, right? And in terms of building a house or understanding zoning, it's no different than a lot of guys that get started and they're doing basement apartments or flips. You know, you slowly start to meet the right people, you start talking to the town, finding out what can or cannot be done, and then you find out what you like. You know, and if you put all of those things together, it starts to make a lot more sense, and you start to form those connections with people in the market. You go and do it.
Cool. What kind of numbers are you looking at with your, let's say your low rise apartment projects right now? Are you targeting like a specific ROI, or do you have other goals in mind?
Yeah, I used to say I wouldn't build for any less than a 10% yield. So if you do $1 million project, you make $100,000, right? That's kind of the in and the out, quick and dirty. Do I like to see more than that? Yeah, of course. I mean, it's important to make as much money as you can and still produce a nice product. And especially if you're going to keep these things, like I like to keep whatever I build. If you're going to keep it, you want to make sure that that's really good for the longevity of tenants and, so on and so forth. But right now, with the way that the cost of lumber is going, right, and all the other building materials, that's a really hard number to put your finger on, right? And then with the cost of land, that's also another hard number to put your finger on. And then, of course, the end value is the number that everybody wants. So if you bought a piece of dirt last year and you own that same piece of dirt today, pick your market, whatever, but it's probably up anywhere between 5 and 25%, and I don't think anybody could have ever forecasted that rise just with the way that inflation's going. So it's a really interesting time to be a builder or in real estate as a whole.
Yeah, it is for sure. I'm finding it really challenging to find opportunities because like I'm looking in a pretty wide range of areas or a lot of areas, and I'm having a difficult time like finding deals that make sense. A lot of them are really expensive and the cash flow just isn't there to support. I'm talking about small multis. I don't know. Are you finding it challenging as well? Obviously there are opportunities and there's always ways to create your opportunities. But what's on the MLS is kind of challenging.
It is. So I'm a big believer in good deals are found, great deals are created, right? You probably heard me say that before. And, if you can take a unit that's got 5 units and add a 6th unit, or you can take an 8-unit property and instead of changing the density, maybe add more parking or add dishwashers or add storage to raise that NOI of the building. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have to change a lot. Like you don't have to fight with the zoning officer to make sure that you're compliant, but you can change the bottom line, which then multiplies out. So, if you take a dishwasher and add $50 a unit over 8 units, that's $400 a month. And then that's, $4,800 a year, cap rate and all that stuff. That's how you can really drive value that way. So that's one opportunity. But I mean, I think anytime any investor goes out into the market, if you just have a little bit more flexibility as to what you're able to take on, right? Whether it's like, and I don't mean you, I just mean in general. Yeah. Like if people are able to expand their mindset and expand their skills and say, hey, you know what, this is a fixer-upper. I didn't usually do fixer-uppers. I used to just, maybe remanage the property to make my money, but maybe now I'll take on a fixer-upper. Or maybe you can make your yield on vendor take-back financing. Or, maybe you could just do something, do a land assembly that 5 years down the road will yield more than that building ever could to begin with. Like trying to think creatively about the land and about that structure is a really good place to start.
Oh, definitely. And I hope the message didn't come across like in the sense that I'm thinking that there are no deals to be found. I know there are lots of deals, and like you said, deals are made, and especially right now because the supply is so low, it's really important to be creative, like you're saying, and take advantage of VTBs if possible, find off-market deals, do whatever it takes to get yourself something.
I just set up a deal yesterday, speaking of VTBs, and what I really love the fact that we do these shows on the fly is that it keeps it really natural and organic. So like I did a now that we're venturing down VTBs, let's talk about it. I did a VTB yesterday with a guy. I bought this property. I found it online, off market, private sale. You know, he'd posted it one day prior. I found it, called him up and I said, hey, you know, I'm interested in your house. Tell me a little bit about it. So he goes, okay, gives me the details. I drove out there after like, 60 minutes. We did a little walk through the house. I said, boom, okay, this sounds good. What's your bottom line? We talked about that. And I said, would you carry financing on this? He goes, yeah, you know what? I'm retired. I'll carry financing for you. So I tied it up at 3%. A vendor take back, 75% loan to value at 3%. Wow. Awesome deal for him because he's he's deferring tax.
Yeah.
He's collecting a little bit more residual on the back end. He can take the property over in the event that I default, which obviously I won't. But I mean, he understands it. He knows real estate, right? And of course, for me, now I don't have to go out and find financing. I've got the cash to do 25% down. That's fine, right? And I'd rather pay the money to somebody in our local market or in the niche or, in our communities than giving it to the bank.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd rather do that. So,
and for some of the listeners that may not have that 25%, because, for example, like some people might be in a position where 20% from the bank is better for them. Do you have any suggestions for what someone can do in that situation where they might be lacking some of the funds to put 25% down if there's a VTB involved?
Yeah, well, if you have no money, I mean, you have to find the money from somewhere. And I think there's a big misconception in the market where people say, oh, do a zero down deal. Like, okay, it might turn out to be a zero down deal in the end because you buy it, you fix it, you refi, you get all your money back and then some, right? And effectively when you're done, you're in it for nothing. To buy a house still takes cash, right? Yeah. So whether you borrow that cash from somebody else on like an unregistered prom note, that could be your 25%. Maybe you take a cash advance on a Visa. Maybe that could be your 25%. Maybe you borrow from friends or family. Maybe you take on a 50-50 equity partner. They bring in the cash. They put the 25% down. Like there's so many different ways that you can do it. Those would be the quick ones off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more though.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what's your plan with this property?
Yeah. So right now I've got it tied up for 10 days conditional. There's a duplex sitting on a double lot. So what we will do, or what I will do, is either, I guess, to simplify this, I'm either going to fix up the house, rent it out as 2 units or maybe even 1 unit, depending, while I redevelop the land behind the scenes. So like change zoning or find highest and best use, and then eventually whack it down and build something a lot better. Or maybe just hang on to it for a few years and see what the market does, and kind of go from there. But yeah, I'm really open to any opportunities that this property has to offer, especially being such a big lot.
Sure. And would you say you paid a market value for the property, or did you get it for slightly under, over?
That's a great question. I would say it's subjective because it's a double lot. I think a builder developer would have more opportunity with it than an end user or first time home buyer. Right. So, I mean, it's not necessarily what you pay for the property, but what you can do with it when it's done. Right. So prime example, you mentioned multifamily buildings earlier. Like there's been times where I've gone out to look at a building and the sellers valued that building at a 2 cap.
Yeah.
The 2 cap is ridiculous. Everybody would say, who's going to buy a building at a 2 cap? That's insane. That doesn't make any sense, right? The problem is that they're not valuing that building based on a 2 cap at market rents. They're valuing the 2 cap based on what they want, right? And using the dividing factor as the current rent.
Yeah.
Whereas if you dial that thing up to market rent and use the 2 cap, nobody could ever afford it. So when I'm looking at properties like this or like a building, it's not necessarily what you pay. Price is what you pay, but value is what you get. So in the end, if there's yield there that you're looking for, that's when it starts to make sense.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And so if you are if you are buying properties right now that are tenanted, are you assuming those tenants typically, or are you trying as much as possible to get vacant possession?
I try to go vacant possession. If you have to assume a tenant and the tenant's awesome, then hey, right on. If it's like a turnkey building or a turnkey townhouse or like whatever people buy, I mean, and the tenant's good, then great, just keep on rolling, But if you're going to fix it up and refinance or split land or take it down, vacant possession is always a lot better. It just saves you a lot of hassle.
Oh, for sure. And if the sellers aren't agreeing to it, are you still like typically moving forward and kind of working something out with the tenants yourself, or do you just walk away from the deal?
Yeah, it becomes a dollars and cents game at that point. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of asking tenants to leave on their terms. And if they don't necessarily want to go right away, maybe you can give them a few bucks to cover their moving expenses, or take that vacation they want to take, or whatever, right? So cash for keys is obviously a good way to do it too.
So why don't we discuss that a little bit? How do you approach that? Because I know everybody's a little bit different. What's your approach with the cash for keys process? Do you just have a conversation with them over the phone, or do you send them a letter in the mail? Do you offer a small amount up front and then maybe increase it later if they're being stubborn, or how do you work?
Yeah, I think every situation is kind of different. I don't necessarily do it with a letter in the mail or an email, but I mean, I'll usually start the process with a phone call and say, hey, this is what's going on. If it's a development deal, I'll let them in on the secret. Like, we're taking the building down. This is what's happening. Or if we're renovating, we're renovating. The hydro is going to be off for 2 months, maybe. It depends on the situation, but I'll start with a conversation in general and just say, look, this is what's up. Have you thought about moving out? What are your plans over the next little while? Where do you think you're going to be? And if they have a clear answer on that, then maybe you can help them guide or be guided in that direction. Yeah. And if they don't, which oftentimes they don't, then maybe a few bucks is the motivator there.
Sure. Yeah. Do you ever find that when you go down that path, some people just kind of get frustrated and they no longer really want to deal with you as much, or that doesn't typically happen because of the way you approach the situation from the beginning?
Yeah. I've been in some pretty interesting tenant positions, and some people are very receptive to getting paid, and some people just stick their heels in the ground and say, I'm not leaving here. Mm-hmm. I've lived here for a long time, and I can respect that too. Like it's their home and they have the right to do so. So it's tough case by case,
For sure. I was thinking about what you were saying earlier with your low-rise apartments. Can you tell us what, I know we're kind of jumping back and forth here, but how many units are you planning on building in your building?
I've got about, in any one specific building?
Yeah, like the low-rise projects you're working on now.
Yeah, they're typically like 3-4 units. Something really interesting, and I've talked about this a little bit in the past, is that single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, things like that, relatively common in the market. Triplex is becoming more and more common with Bill 108? There's some intensification bill. I think it's called Bill 108. But triplexes are becoming more common because intensification is obviously really important. Mm-hmm. There's actually a dead zone between, we'll call it like 4, 5, 6 units and about 15 units, where if you built like an 8-plex purpose built, you're going to be paying all the fees and all the engineering and stuff of a 15 to 20 unit building, but you're doing that on the backs of only 8 units. So you've got to be very strategic with the way that you go about doing your new construction. I'm sticking to low rise, typical, triplexes, duplexes, things like that. I had a 4-plex proposed recently, and again, I bumped into this issue where it was like, you've got all this engineering, you've got all this site plan control, you've got all these road windings and stuff that the city's going to take. Yeah. Does it really make sense? And do you want to spend the time just to get an extra unit? Or just hammering out a couple quick triplexes side by side, splitting the lot, doing a couple really nice developments and maybe trying to bring the yield another way rather than fighting City Hall to get a little bit more density. So triplexes.
Well, on that note, what I've seen recently is there has been a lot of like these newer buildings where they offer either a duplex or a triplex, and they say the basement's got a kitchen and washroom roughed in. So basically, it sounds like, based on what you're saying, that they're avoiding those development charges, and they're giving the new owner an opportunity to spend just a few bucks to put in a kitchen and bathroom and potentially earn some additional income from the basement. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds right. It's no different than putting in a basement apartment that's not legal. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're still going to need certain zoning to qualify for a triplex and so on and so forth. Every city's different for zoning, but yeah, like you can go put 9 apartments into a house if you want, but what happens when the city bangs on your door and says, hey, take out those other 7 apartments because you're only qualified for 2.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
All of a sudden your investment that you probably paid top dollar for is going to be in a tight spot. So I don't recommend doing that.
Well, in that situation where, let's say you're saying that you're allowed to go with 4 units, in that one where you decide not to because of the additional charges, you're allowed to go 4 units, but you're going to spend a lot more than if you went with 3 units. then would you be protected in that situation potentially if you build a 3 with the rough in for the 4th and have the new owner build it? Because I'm assuming the land would allow for 4 units there, the zoning.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you got to build for what you want.
Yeah.
Like there's certain people out there and certain builders who are very crafty and clever and creative with the way that they circumvent laws and get caught and don't get caught, right?
Sure.
But I think when you're going through the site plan process,
like
if you say I have this much parking and my building is going to look like this, and these are all the things that I'm doing, you know, in 2 years, when some zoning compliance officer knocks on the door and says, "Why do you have a 4th unit in the basement that wasn't on the plan?" Well, what's your credibility worth?
True.
You know, you call the town says, you know, you're doing what you weren't supposed to be doing. It's a messy situation. So I think I've always been a relationship first guy. I'm a huge advocate for that. And I think that would just kind of be a bit of a scar.
No, it's good. I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of people will look at those opportunities, the ones that are on MLS with the rough in, and say, wow, that's pretty cool. I can just spend another $15,000 or whatever and put a kitchen and bathroom and I can increase my cash flow. But you're right. If somebody does come knocking on the door, then you're going to be in big trouble. And there's always a chance that someone's going to come within a year or 2 years of you owning that property.
There is. It happens. And why, if you're going to go and spend, I don't know, pick a number, $100,000 to build out a 3rd unit in a basement or somewhere. Do you not want to protect that? I do. Sure. I really do. You know, I don't want issues, and I think that's how people should look at it.
And I know you've done a lot of additional units and properties. Have you come across a situation where you've bought a non-conforming or kind of illegal a property with an illegal unit, and then you kind of messed around with it to make it conform?
I do. So I've actually got one like that right now. So I'm a big advocate for highest and best use, and I'm looking at in this case, I'm looking at this property saying, okay, what is the highest and best use of this? So again, I go back to my 3 principles: land, structure, and my own skill sets and time. I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, okay, we got like a 2-story building here. It's got a non-legal 3rd unit in it. 2 units are legal, which is great, but the 3rd unit isn't. So what am I going to do? Do I cut the roof off and build higher? Do I build an addition at the back? What do I do? So in this case, it's a non-legal triplex. Tonight I've got a committee of adjustments hearing to get a minor variance to recognize the 3rd unit, right? So that will give me, based on the comments and feedback I've received, that will give me zoning compliance, right? So the zoning is already there. I needed to modify a couple parking space sizes and things like that to make sure that it conformed with the neighborhood. So we'll do that. Then I'm looking at the density, right? The density complies, and based on density, I actually could have got 4 units. But again, I bumped into the same situation where there's like a lot of bureaucracy and politics behind getting that 4th unit in this particular situation. So I said, okay, keep it at 3. Let's keep it simple. Let's recognize the 3rd unit. We'll build it out to meet fire code and building compliance. And then I got a legit triplex building.
Cool. Is that something you went and reached out to the city or the town about, or was it because there was some sort of complaint or something like that?
No, it was me. I was proactive on it. So when I bought it from the current homeowner, this person was having a really hard time with the tenants. The tenants weren't paying their bills, COVID, whatever the story is. So I said to this person, I said, look, I'll take it over, but here's what I need. I need X, Y, Z, right? Give me all of the information that you have, both on the people that live here and on the property itself. And then from that, I said, well, we got a non-legal 3rd unit. Where can I take it? I made a few phone calls, and then I said, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do and how I'm going to proceed. And then I just did it. Just go do it. Put in the work. Right?
Cool.
Goddamn, put in the work.
It sounds like when you find opportunities, you capitalize right away. Is that right? Like, let's say you find an off-market deal and you go, I'm assuming you will do some research up front before seeing the property. And then when you see it, do you bring an offer with you right away? Or do you normally like take some time to put things together and then talk to the owner?
Dude, I never leave my house without a handful of things. You get your phone, your wallet, your keys, and a blank purchase agreement.
Nice.
So I never leave the house without a blank purchase agreement, because I never know when the phone's going to ring and I got to go snap something up ASAP.
Yeah.
Right? It's just habitual for me. I just do that.
Cool.
And that's what keeps it kind of fresh. I like that.
So then what's that process like when you go to see an off-market deal and you're dealing directly with the owner and then they've walked you through the house? Do you say, hey, can you hold on 5 minutes? I'm going to go to my car and write you an offer? Is that kind of how it works?
No, not really. I usually just do it right there on the spot. So I mean, I'll ask them what their comfort level is. I never want to be that presumptuous, like a real estate tycoon that comes swinging in there and says, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'll buy your house." That's not me.
Hmm.
I want to find out what their comfort zone is, and I want to say, look, if I'm if how do I even word it? Because it's always on the fly. It's always just like genuine.
Yeah.
I basically just say to them like, what are you looking to get out of today? You know, we kind of set those expectations up front, and then when we get to the end, I say, are you comfortable with putting this down on paper? Can we write up an agreement? Do you want to talk to your spouse? Like, what do you need? Right? I always try to establish that, and as long as we're working within their comfort zone, I can be flexible to it. Because like I can whip off a purchase agreement in 10 minutes. You know, it means nothing to me. It's just math. But for a lot of people, it's not like that. It's very emotional. It's a whole thing. So I need to be sensitive to those constraints.
And how do people respond to you? Because you're asking a lot about what they want and how they feel and their needs. You're asking about their needs. So how do people respond to that typically?
Some people are great and they just tell me. They're like, hey, this house is messed up and I don't want to fix it. So come get it out of my life. And I'm like, great, I can do that. We both have very clear goals.
Yeah.
And if the math works, then we're cool.
Sure.
And some people are very coded and they don't tell me. And then, you know, you try to pull that out of them as best as possible and as respectfully as possible, right? Because a lot of people, when they're selling their houses, they're in a tough spot.
Sure.
So if you can understand that and comprehend it and make it work, great. But like, if they don't tell you, at the end of the day, I mean, if they don't want to tell you, they don't have to tell you. It's their house and it's their product. So just try to work as best you can.
Yeah. And just off the top of your head, do you know approximately out of like 10 opportunities that you get, how many of them do you buy or how many of them make sense?
Yeah, I'll look at 100 deals a week. 1% of deals are actually deals. You know what I mean? So 99 are crap, like really crap. Yeah. And 1% is like a maybe. And then I'll go look at that. But I mean, on the whole, I don't even know how many houses I buy a year. I've done over 50 deals now. So I don't know, a dozen houses a year, one a month. Kind of thing. Just depends. Depends on the year. Depends on the opportunity.
Yeah. And when you say you're analyzing 100 deals a week, are we talking about like MLS deals, off market, everything combined, or just off market?
Everything combined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. That sounds about right. I think I would say probably the same for me. 1 in 100 probably makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not an ego-driven guy. I'm not like a social media character. I'm not, you know, for me to go out and say like, I've bought 1,000 houses or I've got this many doors. Like, I don't care, man. I don't care. Like, how does your portfolio perform? If you have 100 units, but they perform like shit because, you know, none of your tenants are paying, well, that doesn't serve anybody other than an ego. But like, who cares about that? So for me, I'm a slow and steady wins the race kind of guy. Yeah.
And it seems like the quality of your product's pretty good.
I want it to be nice, you know, nice. I saw a speech, I'm going to say a year ago, probably before COVID, maybe a year and a half. And it was like, the guy's name was Rick Summers through Durham REI again. And he was like, his thing was like, nice units, nice tenants, nice rent. That was his motto. Like, simple. I'm like, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If you rent crap, then you're going to get crap and they're not going to pay, you know? So just spin that on its head and you'll be all right.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing on this topic. How much time does it take? How much time are you spending analyzing deals to look at those 100 a week?
Like 30 seconds.
Like 30 seconds per deal?
Yeah.
Oh, are you doing the back of the napkin type of thing?
I'm a napkin number guy, bro.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that on your last show?
I think so. Yeah. Or I may have seen you talk about it at Durham REI as well. We may have touched on it, but yeah. What is it again? What's your calculation again?
Yeah, so I think people could probably find a video on it on YouTube. I might have done one over the years, but it's you need 4 line items to understand really how that deal is going to perform, right? So you need your resale price, your transactional cost, your renovation cost, and your purchase price. So if I work it from top down, it's you take the resale price and you multiply that by 0.91. Okay, so for example, $100,000 house times 0.91, 91%, or in this case, 91,000. 9% represents your transactional costs. So you got like 5% plus HST for your realtor. You got 1.5% for your closing costs on the way in. You got legals on the way in and out, blah, blah, blah. So you're roughly 9%. So you take your 100,000 times 0.91, you back out your renovations, your carrying cost, and what you paid. And that's going to spit out a positive or a negative number. Okay. 99 out of 100 deals, it's like negative 16,000 or like negative 58,000. You're like, oh, geez, what did I do wrong? And the answer is you probably didn't do anything wrong. You probably did it right. The problem is that most people in the market don't talk about all those failures. So you're supposed to think that every deal is a deal, but it's not. Like, it's just not. And obviously, the more positive the number, the more profit you're going to make and the more money that you could pull out of a refi if that was your goal, right? If you're going to flip it, you flip it. If you're going to refi.
So this calculation, you're saying you use this for your like your buy, rental, refi deals as well, or is this specifically for flips?
Yeah, I do it for every deal.
Yeah.
Every deal.
So basically, in the situation where you're doing a buy, like a BRRRR, if you're negative 16,000, is that indicating to you that after you've refinanced, you're going to have 16,000 left in the property?
That would indicate to me that if I were to flip that property, I would be negative 16,000 in equity. So I would have to pay to sell it.
Sure.
Right now on a BRRRR, the calculation's a little bit different because you're not factoring in the commissions.
Yeah.
Right. But you know what? You might get dogged on the appraisal a few percent as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you use that number and you're positive 50,000, for example, and your down payment was roughly 50,000, you're probably going to be into that deal for roughly no money.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Give or take. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I've probably said this 1,000 times. People can go and do spreadsheets all day long and that's great, but it's just not fast. Like, I want to know now, is this thing going to be any good? What's the average basement apartment cost? How long is it going to take me to do? 6 months? Okay. 20 grand in carrying, 75K for a basement, buy it for this, sell it for this. Negative equity? No. Next.
Awesome. All right. So, well, we covered a lot of good things here. I wanted you to tell me a little bit about your book.
My book. Yeah. The Highest and Best Use Playbook, coming out spring market 2021. So not too far off, actually.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So what is it? Obviously, highest and best use is what you're covering, but what can people expect from your book? Yeah.
So, we touched on a little bit here. I break it down into 3 sections. So the highest and best use of the land, the highest and best use of the structure, and of course, the highest and best use of your own skill sets and time. Those 3 things are how I look at every deal. What can you do with the dirt, and what can you do with the building that's on it? Do you fix it? Do you not fix it? Do you wholesale it? And then what are you good at? And I give the example, like if you take a farmer's field and that farmer has hundreds of acres, well, what do you plant on those acres? Do you plant corn? Do you plant soybean? Do you plant apple trees? Do you put cattle on the land? Do you do nothing and just let the grass grow? Maybe it's a sod farm. Is it in a really good part of town, or you're ahead of the proverbial blade where one day you're going to put a condo on it? Now, what do you do with that dirt? What is the highest and best use of that crop? And how many turns per year can you get on that crop? Right? I'm doing the same thing with real estate. And I try to outline that in the book and really bring it all back so people can digest it and do it for themselves.
Sure. Is just out of curiosity, was Quentin like somebody who kind of mentored you a little bit at some point, or because I remember I was being coached by him and he would always emphasize highest and best use. So I'm just curious.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. No, I never did any formal training under Quentin or any coaching or mentorship. I actually met Quentin through a We Buy Houses sign. Okay. And I was parked at a stop sign one day and I look over and there's this like, we buy your house for cash, one of those guys. And I'm like, well, what is this? I was just kind of getting into real estate. So I called the sign and I forget if he answered or if he called me back, but nonetheless, we got on the phone together and he said, well, I don't sell any of these houses because I wanted to get on a buyer's list. I don't sell any of these houses. I keep them for myself, but why don't you come out to Durham REI and meet the rest of the group? And I think there was maybe 50 people that would come out to the meetings at that time. And now it's hundreds. And the guy's just a salt of the earth. I've learned a lot over the years from him, just sitting in the crowd and understanding his perspectives. Yeah. But to answer your question directly, no, I never did any training.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah. The other thing I was going to ask you is, do you have a buyer's list for off-market deals?
I do. So you know what, if people want to go to thehighestandbestuse.com and sign up for the book, if any of this stuff interests you, you can also sign up for the buyer's list in the same click. So you can get on both. Cool.
Okay. Well, with that said, I'd like to jump into the next section, which is the random 5.
Oh.
So I'm going to ask you 5 random questions and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Number 1.
Yeah. All right.
What's the best meal you've ever had?
Teddy's Chicken Parmesan in Oshawa.
Okay. I don't know much about Oshawa, but chicken parm is always good.
If you blow through town, let me know and we'll go there.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
What superpower do you wish you had?
Ooh, geez. Superpower. Never having to sleep.
Okay. You don't enjoy sleeping?
I think I could get so much more done if I didn't have to
Yeah.
rest. But I do enjoy sleeping.
Yeah. Sleeping is so amazing.
I love sleep, but you know what? When you're fired up about something and you want to rock and roll on it, sometimes sleep gets in the way.
Yeah, for sure. What question would you most like to know the answer to?
Ooh, how does gravity truly work?
Yeah. You got to ask, what's that guy's name? Tyson something. I forget. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that guy's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would know the answer to that. Okay, number 4. How would humanity change if all humans' life expectancies were significantly decreased? Let's say to around 50 years.
Wow. It's funny because when you look at the history of time, that's where we came from. A lower life expectancy. I think you get probably less done, but you would get more done in a shorter period of time. Right. So I think your efficiency would have to go up in order to quantify the same amount of stuff.
The way you're thinking, I'm sure some people would say people would work less, just enjoy life. You're thinking, no, you got to work more efficiently.
No. Yeah. You got to work more efficiently.
Yeah. Cool. And number 5, what success principle do you live by?
Success principle do I live by? Well, I got all these quotes on my wall, so let's pick one. What's the upside potential and what's the downside risk? Every deal I look at, I ask myself those 2 questions.
Upside potential and downside risk.
Yes.
Yeah.
How good can things be if they go really well, and how bad can they be if they don't?
So do you quantify that, or do you just kind of just think about it?
I always quantify it.
Yeah.
Napkin numbers, highest and best use, just generic gut feel. I always quantify that. I think if it's a math related problem like finances, well, you make money or you lose. It's binary.
Yeah. Have you ever lost money on a deal?
I haven't.
No,
I haven't.
Good.
I've been very fortunate. I'm very diligent when I buy.
Yeah.
And I think that truthfully, I'm glad that you asked because this is an important thing. So I'm very diligent when I buy. And I think that a lot of people build big businesses and they have to fill that funnel. They have no choice. They have to fill the funnel because they have staff and overhead and they need the volume, right? And when you do that, sometimes you have no choice but to fill your funnel with less than choice properties, right? Just in the game of real estate.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep the machine going, right? And if your volume is such that at the end of the year, you're still making money overall, then yeah, you can fire 1 or 2 crappy deals in there and it doesn't really matter because it all turns out in the end and your net margins are your net margins, right? For me, I was always more of a higher margin, lower volume type of business. And I still continue to be, and that plagues me, dude. Like every day I think, could I be doing more? Do I need to be doing more? Would that make me happy? Would that make my staff happy? How does that look? So, no, I haven't lost money on a deal. I've come close on a couple deals, like, oh geez, but that's kind of how I see my business right now. And that's how I've seen it in the past.
For sure. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, I think we covered a lot here and I appreciate you sharing all this. I think the last thing would be, how do people reach you and what services do you provide?
Yeah, sign up for the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. That's the best way to get on the buyer's list, tee up the book and all that stuff if that interests you when it comes out. And otherwise, info@rwcarrinvestment.com is my email.
Sounds good. Ryan, thanks a lot. Appreciate you sharing your time here today.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Thanks once again for listening to another episode of the Well Off Podcast. Just want to remind you that if you do appreciate the content, all I ask is that you comment, maybe like it if you can on the platform that you're listening to it on, and finally share it with friends and family. I'd love to get the message out there, and it would mean a lot if you can share it. And finally, I just wanted to offer you, as a valued listener, a free copy to the Roadmap to Real Estate Investing, which is a document that I've put together which helps you identify what strategy would best suit your needs at this current time. You go over certain things that are included in this document step by step, and it'll hopefully provide you with some clarity. So have a look. You can go to www.welloff.ca/guide to download your free copy.